There are stories that stay with you long after they end, not because they were beautiful, but because they left something broken inside you. Daniel's story was one of those. He was 10 years old when I met him, small and quiet, with a kind of soft curiosity that made him seem older than his age. He used to look at the world like it was something fragile, something that could fall apart if you touched it too hard. I met him through his mother, Claire. We'd been friends since college, two dreamers trying to figure out who we were supposed to become. She was brilliant back then, full of energy and plans. She used to talk about being a mother someday, about raising a kind, gentle child who would change the world. When she finally had Daniel, I thought she'd found her purpose. The first few years were good. She'd call me just to gush about him. She'd describe how he laughed when she sang, how he loved painting clouds, how he refused to kill bugs because he thought they had families too. I remember telling her once, "You're raising the kind of boy the world needs more of." But that light started to fade. By the time Daniel turned 9, Claire's marriage had begun to fall apart. Her husband, Mark, had grown distant emotionally, physically, and in every other way that mattered. He worked long hours, often stayed out late, and when he did come home, their conversations turned into arguments. Claire began unraveling quietly at first, complaining about exhaustion, insomnia, money, and how Daniel never listened. I thought it was normal parenting frustration, but frustration turned into bitterness. She started to see everything through the lens of her unhappiness. One evening, I went over to her house, and Daniel was sitting in the corner, sketching with crayons. Claire was packing, agitated about something small. I think Daniel had broken a plate earlier that day. She snapped, "He does this on purpose, just like his father. He wants to make me angry." I tried to calm her down. "Claire, he's just a kid, it's not." But she interrupted, her voice sharp. "You don't understand. He's manipulative. He knows exactly what he's doing." Daniel looked up at me then, eyes wide, as if asking me to defend him. I wanted to. I wanted to grab him and take him out of that house. But you don't think that way when it's happening in real life. You tell yourself it's just a bad day, that things will get better. They didn't. Over the next few months, Claire became more unpredictable. She'd swing between guilt and rage, between crying about how hard motherhood was and cursing the boy who reminded her of her husband. Daniel stopped smiling as much. He grew quiet, too quiet for a child. He flinched at sudden noises, stopped inviting friends over, and began sleeping on the floor of his room with the door locked. Then one day, she called me in tears, saying Daniel had threatened her. "He said he hates me and wishes I were dead," she sobbed. I asked what led up to that. She hesitated, then admitted she'd ripped up one of his drawings, a picture of their family where she wasn't smiling. It wasn't long after that she said she was taking him to a psychiatrist. I thought it was a step in the right direction. I didn't know she had already decided he was the problem, not her. 2 days later, she called again, calm, detached. "They've admitted him," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "For therapy." "No," she said flatly. "For treatment, he's dangerous." I didn't know what to say. Dangerous? Daniel, the boy who wouldn't hurt a spider. I told myself maybe there was more to the story. Maybe the doctors really thought he needed help. But something in her voice, the coldness, the relief, made my stomach turn. Over the following weeks, she barely mentioned him. When I asked, she'd wave her hand and say things like, "He's adjusting," or "They say he's still unstable." Her tone was casual, almost bored, as if he were some temporary inconvenience she'd finally outsourced. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, after she'd had too much wine, I asked her directly, "What really happened, Claire?" She laughed bitterly, her eyes glassy. "I lied," she said. The word hit me like a punch. "I told them he tried to kill me," she said, her voice trembling. "I told them he was hearing voices, that he threatened to set the house on fire. They believed me. I just wanted peace." I stared at her, speechless. She looked down at her shaking hands. "He reminded me of Mark. Every look, every silence, it felt like he was judging me, like they both were. I couldn't stand it anymore." I asked her how she could do that to her own son. She didn't answer. That night, I left her house and never went back. Months later, I got a letter. It was from Mark, her ex-husband. He'd found my address through mutual friends. The letter was brief, but every line carried a weight I'll never forget. He wrote, "I know you were close to Claire. You probably don't know the full story about Daniel. I'm trying to fight for custody, but it's hard. The doctors believe her. She told them he's violent. They won't even let me see him without supervision. He keeps asking why Mom doesn't come. I don't know what to tell him." I cried when I read it. I tried to help, called a few hospitals, even drove 3 hours to the one I thought he might be in. They couldn't tell me anything because I wasn't family. I stood outside those cold walls, staring at the blank windows, wondering if he was behind one of them, wondering if he thought he'd been forgotten. Sometimes, at night, I'd imagine him lying awake in a sterile white bed, wondering what he'd done wrong, clutching the last drawing he ever made before his mother tore it apart. Years passed. Claire moved away, remarried, and reinvented her life. I saw her once in a grocery store. She looked radiant, hair done, nails polished, laughter spilling out of her like nothing had ever happened. She talked about her new family, her fresh start. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and ask, "Do you ever think about him? Do you ever see his face in your dreams?" But I didn't. I just walked away, trembling. A few months later, I heard from Mark again. Daniel had turned 16, still in the system, still labeled unstable. He barely spoke now. He'd become withdrawn, mechanical, a shadow of the boy he once was. Mark sent me one of Daniel's sketches that had been returned to him, a simple pencil drawing of a bird in a cage, the door wide open, but the bird still inside. There was something haunting about it. I started writing him letters after that, even though I knew he might never get them. I told him about the world outside, about how the trees were blooming, about how he once taught me that bugs have families too. I didn't know if he remembered me, but I wanted him to know someone still cared. Sometimes I dream about him. In my dreams, he's older, free, standing in an open field somewhere with sunlight on his face. He doesn't look back, he just walks forward. The last I heard, he'd been transferred to an adult care facility. Mark passed away a year later. Claire never attended the funeral. Every so often, I check the obituaries, terrified I'll see Daniel's name there. But so far, I haven't. That absence feels like hope, fragile, small, but still alive. When I think of him now, I think of the way he used to look at the world, curious, kind, full of questions. Maybe somewhere in some quiet place, he's still asking them. Maybe he's found people who see him for who he really is, not who his mother decided he was. Maybe the lie that broke him didn't destroy him completely. Maybe it just slowed his journey to healing. And if he ever reads this somehow, someday, I want him to know that I remember, that I always will. Because sometimes, remembering is the only way to keep someone alive.